I'm going to go over 2 steps that you can use to stop being such a self-critical athlete. Hey there, I'm Eli Straw, mental performance coach and the founder of SuccessStartsWithin.com. Now, I've worked with many different athletes from all ages and all different sports. And whenever we're talking about being self-critical, one core kind of idea always is, it's always there. And it's this idea that the athlete doesn't want to make the mistake again. So if they're getting very critical and they're critiquing their game a lot, this is typically going to come from mistakes. So whether it's being self-critical in the moment after a mistake or after a game, they're going back and criticizing themselves for the way that they played and specifically the mistakes that they made. This is a lot of times coming from this idea that I don't want to make the mistake again because the mistake either hurt myself, hurt my team, or it was just embarrassing and frustrating. But when we start to look at it from more of a sports psychology perspective and we think, what kind of mental blocks and mental challenges or just negative ways of thinking are being caused by being too self-critical. And one of the main ones is going to be fear and anxiety. If you're being too critical of yourself, have you felt that moving forward, you're starting to fear making mistakes again? You're almost getting a little anxious of how you're going to play. This can happen because mistakes are now something that is seen very negative by you. And not to mention the negative self-talk that happens when you are critical of yourself. Now, the idea of being self-critical might be coming from a positive place of not wanting to make the mistake again. But we begin to see that the mental blocks that form and the mental game challenges it causes can hold you back. Because if you're starting a game or playing a game with fear or anxiety, this can cause you to play timidly. It can cause you to hold yourself back. And it can cause you to play almost like you have your foot on the brake. But if you know that you don't want to make that mistake again, and so what you're really after is making an adjustment, trying to fix and learn from those mistakes, there's a better way that you can go about doing this. And step number 1 is you want to reframe how you are talking to yourself. At the core of this self-criticism is going to be your thinking, your thoughts, your self-talk. If your self-talk is more negative and you are beating yourself up, this is going to have many negative consequences, such as lowering your confidence and increasing fear and anxiety, like I was just talking about. But if you can reframe this self-talk, reframe the way that you're talking to yourself, this is going to work wonders in terms of you actually not being so critical. However, in the moment when you're making this mistake, or even after the game, and you're getting very critical of yourself, do these thoughts feel like they almost pop into your head without you having any control over them? If that's the case, then that shows us that there is this natural and automatic pattern of thinking that's more critical of yourself. So what we actually need to do in order to reframe your thinking, reframe the way you're talking to yourself, is we need to work on reframing those natural thought patterns. Now, just like anything else within your game, this takes work. I wish it was something that we could flip a switch and it just changes overnight, but it takes consistent effort. But one of the things I have seen is that if you put this effort in, it's going to pay off in an enormous way for you within your game, because at the core of so many different, mental skills that we're talking about is going to be your thinking. So if you can control your thinking better, reframe these natural thought patterns, it's going to have a tremendous effect on your game. Now, how do you actually go about improving and changing your natural thought patterns? Well, it's actually a very simple process. All you need to do is you need to list out all those negative and kind of self-critical thoughts that you have during a game. Then what you can do is you want to create an alternative for each one of the thoughts that's more positive, more productive. Then, and this is where the actual effort takes place, you need to reread that list to yourself at least once a day. Now, to be honest with you, where I've seen athletes have the most improvement with this is when they actually rewrite each statement each day and then reread each statement. Yes, it takes some time, it takes some work, but it will be worth it. Now, step number 2 is you want to evaluate yourself instead of judging your game. So if we go back to why you are being self-critical in the first place, it comes from this idea that you don't want to make mistakes again. But is beating yourself up over mistakes actually helping you learn from the mistake? Probably not. But instead, if you could evaluate your game in a different way, in a more productive way, what you're going to see happen is you're actually going to find the specific adjustments that you need to make, and it's going to be easier for you to apply these adjustments going into that next week. Now, something, once again, that can really help with this, if we're trying to make it more of an actionable process, is creating yourself an evaluation process for after practices and games. And this is just going to be a list of, a couple questions. One of the things I always like to have athletes do is start to list out some things they did well first, because it can increase your confidence after practice or games. But then you want to look at, what do I want to learn from today, or what adjustments do I want to make from today? Or you could even say, what do I want to improve from today? But what you don't want to say is, what did I do wrong today? Because that immediately kicks you back into that self-criticism mode. So after each game or after each practice, start writing out, an answer to, what do I want to learn from today? What do I want to improve? What do I want to work on? What this is going to start getting you to do is looking at your game objectively and then actually figuring out, what adjustments do I need to make? What do I want to work on? And then this is kind of the most important part, applying what you want to work on during practice and going into your next game so you can actually make the adjustments that you want to make. Now, this whole idea of improving your self-talk, which is at the core of self-criticism, it's a very important idea in terms of any sort of mental game challenge or mental skill that we're trying to build. So what I've done right here is I've linked another video, and it's actually the start of a series that goes into more detail on improving your self-talk as an athlete. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each week on sports psychology and mental training.